Welcome back, folks, to the WP-Tonic Wednesday show, and it's episode 351, and I'm delighted to say we've got a really close friend of the show, a personal friend of mine, somebody that really knows a lot about membership and courses and on e-learning entrepreneurship, and that is Chris Badgett, co-founder of LifterLMS. Chris, would you like to quickly introduce yourself to the listeners and viewers?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me, Jonathan and Cindy. I'm Chris Badgett from LifterLMS, which is a WordPress solution for creating, selling, and protecting engaging online courses. And I have a podcast for course creators called LMS Cast.
Great. And I've got my great co-host, Cindy. Would you like to introduce yourself, Cindy?
Hi, everyone. It's Cindy Nicholson. I'm from thecoursewhisperer.com, where I help entrepreneurs who want to create those courses, get them out there.
That's great. And I'm the founder of WP-Tonic, and we maintain, build, do almost anything to help you with your membership learning management system. If you're looking for a new course to build it, or you're looking to transfer from another learning platform back to WordPress or to try WordPress, we're here to help you. So, Chris, let's start our interview off with WordPress and Gutenberg and all the things that have been said and how it, you've been talking about this when it applies to your own system. First of all, how do you think it's going? Because it was released on Thanksgiving, wasn't it? And how do you see this basically going in the next couple of months, Chris?
Well, I think it's going to go well. Gutenberg, as of this recording, was supposed to roll out yesterday to the public, which it did not. But we were ready for it if that were to happen. So yesterday...
Can I just interrupt? Was you slightly surprised that it didn't go out yesterday?
No, but I would have appreciated more definitive notice that it wasn't going to happen, not so last minute or whatever. But as a software company, I know what it's like with deadlines and, shifting deadlines or timelines or whatever. But so we ran our webinar. That was the public release, which I'm not sure if it's been announced when it will happen. I believe it's probably going to happen sometime in January now.
Oh, you do believe, because there was a lot of let's say ongoing discussion that would be the best decision. So you think that it is going to be moved to January?
I think so. I haven't heard the definitive word. I'm just going back on something that was said earlier on in the process, that if they did not hit the deadline of November 27th, that it was going to go out to January sometime to get clear of the holiday season or something. But I have not heard an official new proposed release date yet. But that being said, yesterday we actually ran a live webinar at LifterLMS where we demoed LifterLMS with Gutenberg. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a new visual editor for WordPress, and it is a new concept of how you build websites with this, concept of blocks, which I can talk about a little bit. But we ran that webinar with our community mostly to get people ready, because it is very much an insider, geeky WordPress thing that doesn't really make sense to the majority of people who use WordPress, 30% of the internet, because it's not out yet. It doesn't exist. Most people don't, work with beta testing software before it rolls out to the public. But of course, our product exists in the space, and we need to be ready for it when it comes. So we've been working with it for many months. And essentially, the function of the webinar that we ran was to show people what it is, because a lot of people don't know what it is, and then show what it means for building courses and memberships on your WordPress-powered website, and how LifterLMS is not just Gutenberg compatible, i.e. nothing's going to break, you're going to be fine, but we also leverage a lot of the new architecture that it presents, so that if people want to build custom course layouts, lesson layouts, that they can do this without using a page builder, by using the new Gutenberg block-based building system. And we showed people how they can do that. So basically, it's more power to the end user to customize with as few tools as possible.
And because, I think your basic product is one of the best learning management systems on the market at the present moment, Chris. And I do honestly mean that. So how would this affect your own plugin? Will this give a lot more ability to custom the actual templates in LifterLMS to a much larger extent?
Yes, both at a individual level, like an individual course, or at a global level. If you want all your courses, if you want the progress bar at the top, you only want it to show to enrolled users, you want the continue button here, you want the pricing table here, all these different layouts. You want to build a columnized structure, you can now do that with Gutenberg. Instead of just using our best guess, which is our course template, which previously you would have to use a page builder like Beaver Builder, Elementor, or Divi to blow that apart and build your own. Now you can do that with Gutenberg.
Yeah, because, you know, I'm not saying this because there are people that start off with WordPress, but I see a lot of people that start off with fully hosted solutions like Learnable, Teachable, Kajabi, and then when they reach a certain level and they know they want a real bespoke, custom look and feel for their course, they look at WordPress and they look at your plugin and some of the other competitors in WordPress. So basically with Gutenberg, they're going to have a lot more freedom and customization functionality, shouldn't they, Chris?
Absolutely. I was just talking to somebody who was moving over from Teachable to WordPress, and they chose Lifter. And they wanted custom layouts, which is what Gutenberg's going to help with, and the page builders that exist already help with. And they wanted all this other functionality beyond just video lessons to go with their coaching program that works with Lifter and a couple of add-ons. So yeah, but the Gutenberg piece, when I see like a Teachable or a Thinkific website, they all look more or less the same. I'm not passing judgment on them. I think those tools are good tools, and I do send certain people there where WordPress is not a good fit for them. But you can very much tell there's not much flexibility in the design and the functionality of those platforms. And when people get to the point that they want that, you know, they want to jump over to WordPress.
Well, you know, it's the same in other sectors, you know, notably e-commerce, isn't it? You know, you've got hosted like Shopify and other fully hosted e-commerce solutions, but then that you can get to a certain stage where you need to go to a more customizable platform, don't you? Right, I think we're given some insights to Gutenberg. Over to you, Cindy.
Well, thank you, Chris. Last week was my first introduction to Gutenberg, so I feel like I'm getting better grasp of what's going on. So it's good to get the heads up, and thanks for that insight. And just to kind of piggyback your comments there about, you know, the customizability, I don't know if that's a word, of what you can do with, you know, WordPress LMSs. You know, often people are thinking, okay, well, if I go with Teachable or Thinkific, you know, I have all that headache looked after, but you really are missing some customization opportunities. So what is it that, you know, WordPress LMS platforms, like what kind of implementation opportunities are there beyond just, say, as you say, the video and, you know, workbook kind of setup?
That's a great question. The first way I like to answer that is just with an analogy. There's a time and a place when an apartment makes sense. Like, let's say somebody just leaves home or whatever, and they're going out on their own, an apartment, they're all kind of the same in the unit, and it just makes sense. Less to maintain, less responsibility. But when you go over to WordPress and WordPress LMS, you basically have the opportunity to build a custom home. And you can build like a simple kind of home, or you can go crazy and build like this elaborate mansion with all this technology and stuff in there. So when you come over to WordPress, if you want to, there's like 3 layers to it. Design freedom, functionality freedom, and control and ownership of the platform, which is a big deal for some people. But in terms of what you can do that you can't do in the other places, if you want to come up with an elaborate design on your own or hire somebody to do it, to have the website look exactly the way it looks in your mind, or have it professionally designed by somebody, and then you want that implemented, that can happen in WordPress with a combination of just themes out of the box and some just basic settings, or with page builders, or even a custom design by a designer. So it can really look anyway. In terms of functionality, Lifter brings in a lot of community pieces and coaching pieces. So if you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to offer, let's say, $1,000 course, but then you have the same course plus private coaching for $5,000, there's coaching tools inside the website where you can have like private content and private conversation, basically coaching with that person, and it's all integrated into like one website. We also have a community thing where you can have a social learning component, so you can have a Facebook-like experience on your website without sending people to Facebook, which is okay, but can be kind of distracting for a learning context. And then you have the entire other, there's more, but those are kind of the top ones. But then on top of all that, you have the whole WordPress ecosystem, which is what makes WordPress so powerful and why it's grown so much, is it's a community. And if you want to add something else to your website, like events, or there's events plugins, if you want to add an e-commerce store where you have courses, but you also have t-shirts and boot camps and, you know, other supplies that are around your niche, you can do that with WooCommerce. Then there's literally tens of thousands of other plugins ready to go off the shelf that you can get going with for free or not much money to really build a custom site.
Yeah, it's so funny because when in talking to people, there's always the divide between what is the right platform to go on, and the opportunity in terms of growth beyond just say the course is so much better with, going through the WordPress. So it really depends on where you want to take it, right?
Yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day who was switching, they outgrew Teachable, and they realized that they could get our most expensive thing, and that was as much as Teachable. But then if they were going to stay in Teachable, they had to get all these other services to fill in the gaps that they would also have to pay for, that they could just get with Lifter and WordPress.
Right.
So that's kind of how it goes. And it can be painful to switch later. But I'm also a big fan, though, if you're really technology averse and you don't want to be responsible for their website and your concept is pretty simple, go with the hosted LMS.
Right. No, I think that makes sense. Jonathan?
Yeah, so we're getting for time. So what about different implementations of LMS? What are the kind of things you can do with it?
Well, it's very scalable. Lifter is just like WordPress is. You can have your personal blog, and if you look at the New York Times website, that's on WordPress. So you can have this like multi-author, like crazy, big, huge website. So the different implementations, you can have at the fundamental level, you can have a one-course website. That's it. Like there's a lot of people, some of the most successful course creators actually just have one course that they make better and better year after year, launch after launch, getting results better and better for their students. And they just scale one thing. That's fine. That's a one-course website. But then you can have a multi-course website. Then you can add multi-instructors. Then you can like scale into like academic and university environments where you're doing like blended learning. Like there's some in-person classes and online classes, and you're using the WordPress category system to create, the business school, the humanities school, the technology department, and you can get like massive. You can also just use it for internal training in a company to train your employees for HR and other requirements. You can use it for, like if you have a software company as an example, you can use it for onboarding new customers into how to use your tool instead of kind of boring documentation. You can actually have like the quick start course and then like different courses focused on the tool. And it doesn't just have to work for software companies. I just see software companies are kind of taking advantage of online education for new customer onboarding, kind of as an early adopter in the concept. You can also use courses for marketing. And then the other thing I'd like to say is it's not just the course. You can add a lot of other things. You can have a membership site that has courses and live Q&A sessions, group coaching calls, access to in-person and offline events. You can build like a monthly membership site that's community and training focused. So the really one of the first questions, like Cindy mentioned, is what kind of course creator are you? What kind of course do you want to be? Where do you want to be at on the stack for technology? I think it's really important to get clear with all that stuff before you go shopping for tech tools.
Yeah, I think that's great. We're going to go for our break, folks. We're coming back and we'll have some more questions with Chris Badgett, co-founder of LifterLMS. Be back in a few moments, folks. We're coming back. I think we've had a good discussion so far with Chris. Over to you, Cindy.
So I wanted to ask you, Chris, of the clients that I work with, no one necessarily has a plan to just do one course and be done with it. They have these visions of, either creating membership sites or masterminds or what have you. So there's often more than just that first course, which, is really kind of the introduction to, access to you, so to speak. What do you see is working for people beyond, say, like once they create the course, where have people been successful in moving beyond that in their business?
It's it depends thing. Like I see people that just double down on one course and I'm like the course guy on whatever, and I just keep doing that same course. And I think that's really hard for some people to resist, especially creative people that want to move on to the next thing. But some of the most successful courses online are just, 10 iterations on the same thing. That being said, there's a great community called the Membership Guys. They have a podcast and they have a membership for membership site builders and course creators. And they're doing, they have like a monthly, it's set up more on the membership model. They have courses, they have coaching, and they have all these worksheets and checklists and guest interviews and like a really robust membership. And I'm watching them grow and scale quite well, and they're doing good. And, one of the things I think that makes a membership successful, like before I created LifterLMS, let me give you this example. I ran an agency where we focused on high-end membership sites and training platforms. And for one particular client, he spent a lot of money with us, but in his launch, he makes over $1 million year after year. But he's also not doing it alone. And he has a membership site that has courses, but it also has these live events and all these other stuff, expert Q&A, but he's not doing it alone. Just like Mike and Callie, the membership guys, are not doing it alone. They're bringing in guest lecturers. They themselves are a business partnership. The client I was talking to you about has 3 virtual assistants, a camera crew, and has 20 other people that come onto his platform to help create content through an expert kind of interview panel series. So if you are going to go to the membership, the monthly, I'm going to go big, my advice would be, based on the ones I see that are successful, is to not do that alone. Don't try to do that alone, or at least try to get some help, or as soon as you can once you get into the process. If you're going to kind of keep it tight and small, I would steer more to just doing a one course platform, or potentially a handful of courses done by you. So I could see it go either way.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of mine they automatically think that they want to go into the membership site, the membership area. And it's like, the idea and the concept is great. It just you've got to recognize that that's ongoing content that you need to be continually providing. So it's going to take some work to keep that going for sure.
Yeah.
Jonathan.
Yeah, just a comment. I just think I think you make a great observation there, Chris. Is that if you're going to go above a very simple course, you know, you're probably going to need partners, and those partners don't have to be formal partners. You know, they could be subcontractors or employees, normally subcontractors initially, and virtual assistants. But the idea that you can do this all yourself, or you need partners, you know, they can, you know, like all partnerships, that can be really fantastic, or it can produce a lot of other difficulties. But on the other hand, you know, to grow an online business on your own, to do all the content plus the technical side plus the actual day-to-day running of the course is going to be difficult, isn't it, Chris? On your own.
And if we look at if you look at the internet marketing industry, love it or hate it, if you look at what people do with virtual summits, where they bring all these experts together and do this big launch and everybody's email list, and it's free while it's live, and then it's a paid product later. If that whole industry could mature a little bit and become like a more, like, I think the internet marketers are proving that you can get a bunch of people together and you can add value and you get to leverage everybody's audience. But if you can kind of formalize that, get a little more focus going into like what people are talking about, and do some intentional like curriculum design around results for the learner, and maybe slow it down a little bit, I think it's just proven that you can get people together who may even be like, if you're bringing in an expert, I'll speak from experience here. My first personal online course site was in the gardening niche. It's in a niche called permaculture. It was a project I did with my wife. She did a course on soils, and she's not famous she has a master's in conservation-based agriculture, but she's not famous. And so once we did that one course, I built a website. I found somebody who was like super famous in the permaculture niche, who lived a state away from me in Montana, and I drove over to Washington. Actually, he had just moved to Montana, but I drove a couple hours to him, filmed a workshop, put him on our website, and boom, it takes off, because he's like huge in the industry. And then I leveraged that and met with more experts and so on. And it became a lot easier to just not do it alone. And at the same time, I didn't lose control of the business. I'm still the only owner of that project, but I do also, those people get paid as their courses sell on my platform or whatever. So it's not like you have to give up all this control. It's actually doesn't have to be that way. It can just be a win-win-win all the way around.
So what's the kind of different ways from your students, and the students can get feedback from you inside a course? Because I think this is really very important to around a subject that me and Cindy recently discussed, which was this little dirty secret in the membership e-learning industry. That's dropout. That people drop out after 3 months. So I think effective feedback, a feedback loop, is one of the ways that one of the tools that you could utilize, so you don't get this horrendous dropout rate.
Yeah, feedback and getting results early. The big problem with these courses are with the statistic I heard was 10% completion rates. But the problem is the expert's curse, or whatever you want to call it, is like, if I'm an expert, I just create a course that's way too massive. I'm trying to throw everything under the sun in there, and it's not necessarily organized around a particular process or behavior change or whatever. And people are excited when they join, but then they just kind of fizzle out because we're just doing a video version of an encyclopedia. But in terms of feedback, that's a big part of engagement. Like, as much as I love the 4-hour work week and it inspired me and to do a lot of things, I think course creators tend to go for passive and automation way too early. So yeah, go ahead and automate your LMS, automate your videos. But if you're not in there, like interacting with your students and like seeing how it's working or what they're missing or what's really landing well from your curriculum, you're missing a huge opportunity to like improve your content. I don't think anybody gets it right the first time around. I think we can all relate to a college professor or a teacher who's like just doing the same thing they've done for the past 30 years. It's no longer relevant. It's kind of sucks. So having a conversation with your students, whether that's like in office hours, as simple as like once a week, have like a Zoom, kind of like we're recording this, where people can talk to you. Having assignments like you can do in WordPress LMS, like Lifter, where people, you know, are submitting things or putting into action what it is you're teaching. It's all about bridging the gap from entertainment to education. I'm not saying don't be entertaining. You absolutely should and need to be entertaining. But if you're just passing information through the computer screen, and people are just sitting back watching a video with Facebook and everything else is going on, that's not really learning. You got to get, what I like to say when we launched our assignments add-on was it's all about getting your learners taking action. And then based on their action, there can be a conversation there about, it's not just about did you pass or what grade did you get or what's the quality, but let's talk about it a little bit. And there's all kinds of places. I'll just list them off really quick. Lesson comments, forums, social learning area, private coaching content and the discussion around that. You can go into these like virtual meeting rooms like Zoom, like we're in now. You've got email that you can do one-on-one or at scale through your CRM. Feedback is not a problem in the internet. So it's just about deciding to do it.
Yeah, I think that's so right. And you do have to think about it because this is, I was going to say a little bit dicey, but that's the wrong word. What I mean is one solution, one kind of strategy or framework that one successful other course entrepreneur is doing might not suit your audience. So you've got to test things, see if they work with a particular audience, because another type of audience, it might not work. What do you think of that, Chris?
Yeah, you got to know your audience. Like, what's their comfort level with technology? What are they, you know, what tools are they already using? How much do they like interaction, or do they prefer to remain as remote as possible? It really depends on the audience. Is there going to be a language barrier? Some courses are very international and you need to figure out that. There's all kinds of, yeah. I mean, you have to know your audience. There's no such thing as a good course that's made for everybody.
Exactly. Well, we're going to wrap up the audio part of this. It's gone really quick, but Chris has agreed to stay on. And what we're going to, which you'll be able to see on the WP-Tonic YouTube channel and on the WP-Tonic website with a full set of show notes. What we're going to be discussing in the bonus content is the concept of the plus concept. I'm going to ask Chris what he thinks about integrating webinars with online courses, and we've got a couple other questions from Cindy as well. But we're going to wrap up the audio part of this interview. Chris, how can people find out more about you and LifterLMS?
The best place to find me is at LifterLMS.com, and we also have a podcast for course creators called LMS Cast that gets into a lot of issues, not just the tech, that course creators and membership site builders face. And I am at Chris Badgett on Twitter.
And it's a great podcast. Chris covers some of the stuff that we cover, but you can't have enough of good stuff though, can you? Cindy, how can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
Well, if you're wanting to create a course like Chris is talking about, where you get people engaged and actually going through the course, but you kind of don't know how to design it in the way that will happen, that's what I help people with. And you can find more about me at thecoursewhisperer.com.
And we we can work with Cindy, and we do all the technology stuff. If you decided it's time to move away from Learnable or Kajabi to your own custom platform on WordPress, we can help you with that, and work with Cindy to produce that really great course and get online victory for your e-learning system. We'll be back next week with an expert that hopefully will help you become a better course entrepreneur. We'll be back next week. Bye. Right, Chris. Course Plus. What do you think this is about, Chris?
I think it's about moving beyond just a chapterized video version of a textbook for what your course content is. I think in the earlier days of information products, you know, there's conversation around perception of value. Like, you have a book, but if you add video, then it has a higher perceived value. Let's just get beyond all that BS and move into like courses that work. Because fundamentally, a prospective student or learner or client or whatever, they have one question in their mind, which is, will this work for me? Will it work for me? So it's important to build courses that actually work for whatever's promised in the marketing. It's not about perception of value. It's about real value. And in the course content is really important, but there's other things that you can add in service of results. You can add coaching, you can add community, you can add masterminding, you can add live events, you can do retreats, you can do virtual events, you can do office hours, you can bring in guest lectures, you can offer additional products that go with your course, you can package in services, you can package in productized services, you can bring in group projects, you can bring in other software, and there's more, but those are just some ideas of what is the unique mix. Course plus what out of the list I mentioned is going to help people get more results, which is going to mean it's going to help the course work for more people.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were saying, replying to my question, is I think what it is like podcasting. Podcasting has linkage to radio. It's why it's powerful, you know, why people like to listen to podcasts. So it gets a certain amount of its tradition from radio, but it isn't radio. And it's a bit like online courses. They're based on video. So they have a certain bit of linkage to television in a way, online video, watching it. But on our hand, it isn't. So new platforms tend to have like the web. The web is linked to newspapers about the traditions of a home page, other pages of a newspaper, and it's like the web. Its layout came from the traditions of newspaper layout, but it isn't. So new technologies tend to have a linkage to past technologies, but on the other hand, they have to find their own way of expressing themselves. Do you think I'm correct in that, or am I waffling, Chris?
You're absolutely correct that novel new technology, you see this in ed tech or marketing tech, where a new technology is linked to an old one somehow, like improving on the concept or bringing in new media in some way. So there's a higher perceived value when that happens. But the way I like to design software is I actually remove all the technology, and I'm asking you, the listener or the viewer, to go back in your life to one of the best learning experiences in your life that did not involve the internet or online anything. And whatever that was, there was probably some content there. There were some words there, some instruction, but there was probably also a group of people. You probably weren't doing it alone. There were some conversations happening. Perhaps the mentor, the leader, the teacher, or guide, or whoever was providing some personalized feedback to people, since not everybody in that group that was learning something are exactly the same. These are the elements that when you put together, not just any learning experience in your life, but the best think to that, and then you're going to be on the trail to like thinking about what is the mix, the course plus what that I need to put together.
Cindy?
Yeah, you know what? I totally agree with you, Chris. I think that we've just kind of transplanted the classroom learning environment online. And so, that's just a talking head at the front of the room or on the video. And people think that that's the way people learn because that's the only way not the only way, that's the way we've been conditioned to think that that's how you learn. And so that's what's been happening. So to be able to think beyond just that talking head video and what else can you do to enhance that overall experience is, I think, what the huge opportunity is with online learning. We just need to get people to think beyond just that, that what they're used to from a learning experience. So thank you for that. You're speaking my language, sir. I do actually have a question for you. One of the things that you pride yourself at your company is that you're very responsive to the needs of your community in terms of incorporating their feedback and enhancing, the service that you provide. What process do you go through in order to make the decision of, yes, we'll implement this versus no, we can't do that?
That's a great question. So we are very engaged, and there's a lot of, I would say, listening points. Whether that's social media, live calls. Like I mentioned, my Twitter, you can schedule a live 15-minute call with me. Anybody can. I talk to them and they talk to me about their course goals. I very much have my finger on the pulse. We have feature requests page on our website where people can submit features. We do surveys and polls on Facebook. We're collecting and aggregating all this data. We have our own internal voting system. But the reality is, you hear this concept sometimes in business about decision-making where it's not, so a lot of people say, I make data-driven decisions. I'm a bigger fan of making data-informed decisions. If we were to implement everything that people requested, we'd end up with like a bloated Frankenstein mess. So the way our decision-making process of what to implement, first of all, is we treat every single incoming request with respect. Because even if it's something that we know we're probably not going to do that, or we're not going to be able to get to that for 4 or 5 years or something like that, or it's not a good idea and we feel strongly that way, we're still going to treat that request as we should. And we were open to being wrong and changing our stance based on things. But essentially, what it comes down to with what do we do next, there's certain things as time happens where we just have to adapt, whether that's this Gutenberg thing, the GDPR thing that happened. So we have to be very much in the present of the, economic, political, technology stack climate. But then what I go back to when we're prioritizing features is what is required to help education entrepreneurs build courses that work. So the secret is, I'm a big fan. I listen to our customers, but they're not our number one place we listen to. We actually care even more about our customer's customer. And what is going to help our customer's customer get results and learn more effectively is the most important thing. So when a request comes in, we frame it in terms of that. So will this thing they're asking for help their learner get more results? So for example, these social learning features we have, when people are saying to us, our students are in the social learning that you have, and they're trying to do this so that they can talk better to each other, learn something, we're probably going to prioritize that. Our assignments add-on it's all about getting learners taking action. It's not just homework for homework's sake. So for example, we have an assignment type called a checklist, where you create content, you give people a checklist of stuff they have to check off before they can complete the lesson. You can lock down forward progress until they do the work if you want to. But if we get a request on how to make people there's a way to get their students taking action better, we're going to end up prioritizing that. So at the end of the day, it's a combination of vision of what if I go back in my life to those most profound learning experiences that were present, and I see what was present outside of technology, it's a combination of bringing that stuff in, customer feedback, customer feedback, and the current climate of just remaining relevant and making sure we're obeying the law and everything like that. So it's pretty complicated. It's a complex mix of data, intuition, and feedback.
All right, that's a good answer, and that's a good way to approach it. I think I like your answer about how it's your clients' students that you really want to be mindful of, because if it's not going to, move the needle for them, it, may not be a worthwhile venture. Jonathan.
We had Natalie on last week, and we were talking about automation, marketing automation, but how automation processes could be actually implemented in a membership and a learning management process to help with keeping students involved, and also helping in offering different customized opportunities to those students. Do you see that in 2019, the next 18 months, an increasingly large opportunity for e-learning entrepreneurs to increase the value of their courses, and how do you see that working?
Absolutely. And Natalie's from Access Ally is great, by the way. She's really sharp. We come, like, our background, Thomas and I, I'm talking about at Lifter, my business partner, our background is out of the Infusionsoft community. It's where we started doing client work and building really complex marketing automations and, sales process automations, and integrating that with WordPress and websites, which evolved into membership sites and e-learning. So from the beginning, we built LifterLMS with a lot of automation capabilities built inside of it, and personalization, where we took our best, what actually worked in Infusionsoft, and we built it into WordPress with our behavioral based trigger system. Like, if a student does this or doesn't do this, then you can send this email or this text message or display this thing on the screen. We built that into the tool. And then we have add-ons that extend that even further. And then there's other great tools like WP Fusion, which, can give you really intricate tagging based on behavior and do stuff from your CRM. At the end of the day, the way I always describe that scenario is scaling the human touch with robotics, but you still have to have the human touch. So, for example, our private coaching add-on called Private Areas, you can set up automations in your site for it to schedule like private coaching calls with the person. But at the end of the day, a human needs to show up and deliver that coaching. And they're going to have a lot of time, because this website and the e-commerce engine and the marketing engine did all this stuff to get the sale, get the student in, get them engaged, get them started taking the course, get them to schedule through your calendar without you having to do anything. But that human still needs to show up for the interaction. So I'm a big fan of it. I see in marketing automation, specifically around segmentation and personalization and this tagging and all this stuff, what I see happen most of the time in reality is people will, first time through, they're going to build a complicated mess. And then it's not really going to work well. It's going to be overbuilt, and they're going to have to burn it down. And then they're going to come back and they're going to build it again, and it's going to be a little better. But it's not until they burn it down again and it's their third time where they see the automation that really matters and get rid of all the rest, and make sure to include enough of themselves or this coaching or their coaches or whatever to, have some humanity inside the system as well.
It's funny that you say that, because I was in a consultation with a client. Well, he's not a client, but hopefully he will become one. And he he had a course that was quite successful, had over 200 students, and he showed me he was using Active Campaign, and he was shown his automizations, and he's a electrical engineer from from his background, and there was some of the most elaborate automation sequences.
The engineer, right?
It was just he did need me to consult for consultation around ActiveCampaign and the actual technology, but where he really did need some consultation was that he had spent an enormous amount of time on this, and it needed to be much more simple. But on the other hand, he was being highly successful, so how can you tell him that he's doing something wrong? It's a difficult situation, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah.
Just to finish off our discussion, webinars. Now, me and Cindy have been talking about webinars and maybe offering more value to our listeners, but it's a difficult thing to do. I know you do a lot of webinars yourself. What have you learned? What are some of the mistakes you've made, and some of the things by doing a lot of webinars that you've learned that you might be able to share with our listeners and viewers?
I wish I had started doing it sooner. And so the reason I do webinars is as a software company is I want to help people get unstuck, not just with technology. And it's not always like a webinar about Lifter and you should buy it or whatever. Most of my webinars are actually with other people who in some way service the course creation community across the 5 hats, I call it, as being an expert, a teacher, a technologist, a community builder, and an entrepreneur. I'm trying to help them get more skills across all those areas. So that's what my webinars are about. I wish I had started that earlier. That's that. The other thing is to not do it alone. Like I said, I'm bringing in guest people, but also don't just do guests. Like you should do some of your own just webinars without bringing in somebody as well. That's another one. Engagement's key. Like if people aren't engaging or asking a lot of questions, you're doing something wrong or you picked the wrong topic. So I really like it when I'm just talking or I see guests talking and I can see the Q&A box and the chat going crazy. That's a good sign. So the technology doesn't always go perfect or whatever, but I feel like after a year, I use Zoom for webinars. I finally pretty much know how to do it. And if I do have a PowerPoint presentation, know how to be on the right thing or whatever, but, or forget to hit record. There's all these like stuff. Like, so now when I run a webinar, I actually have a little checklist that I go through at the beginning, just so I don't miss something like, not hitting record or not letting them know how the questions work or whatever. Yeah. So those are some top tips, and also I see a lot of people like changing the name of webinars these days to like masterclass or all these other things. I think that's fine. Like find a name that works for you. And really the main thing is if there is going to be a sales component, like when I bring in a guest, usually they have something for sale, but before I let them on the stage, there's a lot of conversations that happen before that. We have to make sure that there's going to be a ton of value for somebody who comes, is going to learn something, and they're not going to buy anything. So that's really important too, if you're doing those kinds of webinars.
Oh, thanks for that, Chris. We're going to wrap it up now, Chris. Folks, I think it's been a fascinating discussion. I think my co-host is relieved. She thought we were going to have a total technology feast here, but what I didn't tell her that Chris has got a co-founder. Chris is a really bright technologist and also marketer, but he's got a co-founder, poor old Thomas, that lives in a coding cave. He's not actually allowed to see the sunlight, Cindy. He only appears occasionally in the light. That's my internal joke with Tom and Chris. We're going to wrap it up now, folks. We're going to hopefully next week, not hopefully, we will have another great guest and another great conversation. We'll see you soon, folks. Bye.